All right, y'all. I need you to read this because I'm not going to say it. I need you to read this because I'm not going to say it. Did you read it? I believe she's telling the truth. Allegedly. I believe she's telling the truth. And things are starting to make a lot more sense, especially when you think about what we saw in Paris. Things are starting to make a lot more sense. I want to show you what she said before she said this. Because what she said before she said this might even be more interesting, in my opinion. So this is from the Anything Goes podcast with James English. This woman is a self-proclaimed witch. And this is at the beginning of the podcast. They're talking about her upbringing. They're talking about how she got into being a witch. And she tells a story about how she was a single mom and she was desperate and she hit rock bottom. And I want you to listen to what she did in order to get out of rock bottom. And I want you to listen to what she got herself into, which ultimately led her to this experience. Is everybody on the same page? Okay, I'm just making sure. So she does have an accent. So you have to listen closely because she does have an accent. All right, let's go.
It's like, I can't do this. And I had pressure off my mum. I had pressure, obviously, just from being a single parent. He was nowhere to be seen. He ended up going away for one reason or another. And I was at rock bottom and I thought, I'll try some magic. So I did a bit of research and I was looking on the internet at Anton LaVey and Aleister Crowley's sorts of types of magic, and I took excerpts of information, and I ended up setting a ritual up. It's basically a pentagram on the floor. I had to myself and put blood on the points and say these words, and they were English. So I does this ritual, goes to bed thinking I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to be a star or something. Because I didn't ask what it is. A lot of people who do this type of stuff, who go into making pacts with demonics or the dark side, will be specific. And I wasn't. I just wanted money. I didn't care how it came. So on the thing that I just wrote, I just want money and love. And that was that. So it goes to bed, I wakes up, everything's normal and nothing changes. And I left it for about a month. And I was like, that hasn't worked. I haven't done it right. So it does more research. And I must have been researching God for about 6 months. And I found bits and bobs, did another ritual a few months later, and it didn't work again. And I was like, I'm obviously really, really crap at this and I'm not doing it right. There was no doubt in my mind that it was possible. It was just that I wasn't doing it the right way. So after a while, I did one spare at the moment in the middle of the night in my house for whatever reason. I just wasn't feeling great and I thought, okay, we'll try again. So I did, but this time something took over my body. And I started writing these symbols in a pentagram. Symbols that I couldn't write to you now. I couldn't tell you what they are or draw them. I've never seen them again ever since, apart from in a vision. And yeah, like I say, something takes over my body completely. And I'm dotting the blood everywhere, and then I stand in the pentagram. And these words are coming out my mouth. It's a foreign language, something I've never understood. It was Latin, I know now, looking back. So I'm saying these words, and all of a sudden, there's this, like, we had no doors in the house. They'd all been pulled off over the years and arguments and stuff like that. So we had this curtain over the door on the top floor. We had a 3-story townhouse type of thing. And this big gust of wind hits the curtain and blows in my face, this ice cold, and I felt the presence in the pentagram with me. So I've shut my eyes, panicked, and I couldn't move. I was like frozen for a little minute, and then I jumped into bed, through the quilt over my head like a baby, like you would when you're scared when you're a kid, and I didn't move, couldn't breathe. And after a few hours, these bells started, but they were that loud. It was that you could feel it in your chest, and I'm thinking, surely everyone can hear that. There was a church in the village, but it's never that loud. It was like it was right next door to me. And the whole night, these bells are going on and on and on. Falls asleep at some point and wakes up in the morning again. I'm like, I feel normal. Don't feel anything. And a couple of weeks, I was applying for this, that and the other, and I did want to get back into the modelling. It sends my portfolio off to a few agencies, always got a no, but didn't reply. Because to be fair, I wanted to go into fashion, and I'm only 5'2". You know, I haven't got perfect skin. I'm probably not the body for it. But one day this email comes back and he's invited me for a casting. And I was like, oh my God, I've made it, type of thing. And I went, and they loved me. And I was like, wow, this is quite surreal.
Okay. Can we just pause for a second? Are we all on the same page? She hit rock bottom. She hit rock bottom. She's a single mom. She's desperate. She says, okay, let me try magic. So she tries magic. She tries it a couple times. She does some spells. She does some rituals. She gets some Aleister Crowley books, and she's doing all this stuff, right? And it's not working. But she said something very interesting. She essentially said that she always had faith that it was going to work. She just thought that she was doing something wrong. But she never lacked belief, which was very interesting when she said that. I don't know if you caught that or not. So she's doing it. She's testing it. It's not working. One time, it finally works. And she said that she said she hit one of these and was dabbing it on the pentagrams, right? And she said she felt like a cold rush of air coming through the window, and she felt like a presence with her in that moment in the pentagram. And she essentially said that, when people do these types of rituals, they ask for something very specific. But because of her desperation, she simply was asking for money. She just wanted to make some money. And then to the point where we are right now, she said that she wanted to get into modeling, but she was never the type to be a model. She just didn't have, the body type to be a model. But after doing this ritual, which she perceived to be successful, suddenly she gets a casting call to be a model. And she goes in and they love her. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Okay, let's continue.
So they put me on the books, and I think it was about 3 weeks after that casting that I went to, I started hearing this thing with me talking to me. It's like a low, very low, growly voice, which was the demonic that I'd made the pact with. So I picked a very specific demonic to do it with called Belphegor. It's a demon of sloth and gluttony and stuff like that. And it's telling me its name and it's speaking to me, and I'm thinking I'm schizophrenic. I'm hearing voices. This is peculiar. But at the same time, I was like, maybe it's just because of what I've done. Maybe this is how it goes, type of thing. So I'm getting slow bits of work. I've got this thing in my ear. Now at this point as well, I'd always been able to hear other spirits, my own spirit guides, other people's passed on loved ones, my own passed on family, and it got shut off. And I couldn't hear nothing at all. And that was quite freaky. So I'd gone from hearing all these lovely things and lovely messages like you're safe and blah, 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 to this thing screaming at me. And I think at some point as well, I would be able to tap into the demonic realm and you'd hear these screams in your head 24/7 to the point where it's hard to concentrate on what you're doing. So yeah, carries on with that agency for a few months. And after a while, I was thinking like, it's quite slow. I was getting well paid work and it was good. But I was like, it's quite slow. And I ended up being introduced to an agent, like a freelance agent. And he was all over me at a party. He knew someone that I knew. And I hated him. I didn't like him. Big, egotistical, and big I am. You know what I mean? Thought he was great. So I was dead like opposed to him. And he gave me a business card to come out the toilet. And he was like, I can help you. In fact, I think I can get you a lot of well-paid work. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Takes the business card and I thought nothing of it. And the work started drying up from this agency. And I was like, I'm getting a bit desperate. I've got bills to pay. So I sent him a message. And he was like, yeah, if you let me come and take some photos of you, I've got a private buyer who'll buy them off you. And I was like, okay, what's your commission? I'm not taking none. And I was like, okay. So it goes, does the shoots. He made me a fair bit of money off the photos. And it was not on a miss, it was modelling tights. And I didn't speak to him very often. He'd message me and say, do you want this job? And I'd be like, no, I don't fancy that, or can't do that, whatever. And after a minute, he said, look, I've got a really, really well-paid job. It's international. Do you want to get it? I'm going to send your portfolio off if you want you. We're going on Friday. And I was like, okay, fab. Now I'm petrified flying. I have to take the house plan to fly. Anyway, he comes back and he's like, yeah, right, they want you. We're going. So he goes, and I was stressing having the tablets in my bag. I didn't want to take them till we'd gone through security because I didn't want to feel monged going through the airport. And he was like, I'll carry them. And I was like, I don't want to get them took off me. Like, I don't want to think anything because they weren't on prescription or anything like that. So he puts them in his bag and we goes through, and for whatever reason, we were having a drink somewhere. And I goes, gives them tablets. So he passes me them, I take one. And I blacked out. Don't usually black out off diazepam. And when I wakes up, we were in a cab, we'd flown, got out at the airport, and we're in a cab on the way to this hotel. And we goes in, and it was night time by the time we arrived. And we've got separate rooms. I'm in my room and I'm sort of coming to a little bit, waking up a little bit. And there's a knock on the door and he was like, we need to take some content. So he comes in with his camera and he was like, put this on, and show me like this black lacy lingerie bodysuit thing with some stockings and suspenders. And he's taking photos of me, but he's filming it as well. And he's finished doing his content basically. And I've leant over the desk to get me ciggies. And he's grabbed me from behind on video. And I've jumped out my skin and gone, oh, what the are you doing? Like, you've insulted me. And he was like, oh, do you blame me? You're gorgeous, you know, how do you expect me to keep your hands off? I know this is part of the industry. And to be fair, I've seen a lot of people get groped. I've seen a lot of people being touched in ways that were inappropriate and stuff like that. And it is a bit of a culture within that industry, within a lot of industries. The media industry is the same.
I just want to make a note, because this is something that we have known for a very long time, that type of behavior is part of the culture. I call it Hollywood, quote Hollywood, but in, like the entertainment industry, like mainstream type of stuff, that behavior is a part of the culture. And we've seen that come out time and time again. But it's very interesting how she was kind of like justifying his actions in terms of saying like, oh, well, to be fair, I've seen this happen to a lot of people, and it kind of just comes with the territory. It's very interesting what people are willing to endure in order to get what they think they want. Another way to put it, it's very interesting what people are willing to endure from a humiliation standpoint in order to achieve success. Success that is ultimately temporary, but that humiliation will stick with you for the rest of your life. It's very interesting. Anyway, let's continue.
So I suppose I sort of just put it to the back of my mind and was like, oh, he's just a sleazebag, he's just horrible. And the day after it was a 2-day shoot. And that night he said, we're going to an after party. And I was like, oh, all right, fine, great. I was knackered. And I remember I didn't want to go. We were flying out the next morning. And we're in this party. And after a minute, he comes over to me. I'm trying to leave him because he's getting on my nerves. They're close to me all the time. And I'm talking to these local girls, random girls. And he's like, come over, I've got someone I want you to meet. So he takes me like right to the back of this club, through like a corridor that would lead to the toilet, and then this back room with a black door. And we goes through, and there's 3 fellas sat there between the ages of 60 and probably 80, all dressed in suits, briefcases. And one of them stands up, the other 2 stay sat down, and he comes over and he was like, I've been waiting to meet you. And he shakes my hand and he's looking me up and down like I'm a piece of meat. I was like, come over. So we sit down and we're having a drink and they're all talking, and I'm just sort of don't know what to say. And I was quite aware as well, they were all very posh. And I'm quite common and brassy, so I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know about wine. I don't know about these things that these people are talking about, stocks. And out of nowhere, one of the other fellas just looks at me and went, "What's your party trick?" And I went, "What?" He went, "What's your party trick?" And I just went, "Oh, magic." And just started laughing. He went, "Oh, so you're one of us then?" And I was like, "Oh, do you do magic?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I'm thinking he thinks I've just meant drugs. And I'm thinking he's probably thinking drugs. And it wasn't until a little bit later on that was the first time they'd let on that they sort of knew what I'd done. And
That was a very interesting part. This is a very interesting part. I don't know if you caught it. But essentially, you have these three individuals that she meets behind this like private room within this like club or party atmosphere that she's at, right? And she meets these three individuals. Obviously, based on the description, they're well off. She described them as posh, which I'm assuming she means like wealthy and like, you know, put together in that sense. And she said that she's more common. So she doesn't really know how to have these conversations with these like rich, you know, people because she's just, you know, common. And essentially, one of the dudes says, you know, you do magic like I do magic. Essentially alluding to the idea that they know how she got into this situation. I thought that was very interesting. Remember this point in the story because these three gentlemen, these old gentlemen, they gonna come back around in the story. All right. So remember them in the story.
ends the night, flies home, and I got invited to basically another what was called a party about 2 months later. And it was basically there was girls there with loads of fellas, all kinds of people, but them three men were there. And I weren't introduced to them. I didn't see them initially as we went in. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. It was a proper full on. Literally, there's people getting shagged everywhere, and I'm looking at the agents and I'm like, what is this? What have you brought me to? You know, I get it that some girls might be into that in this industry, but I'm not in. Like, what is this? And I wasn't doing any like stuff modelling. I was doing really tasteful, nice stuff. And he was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about this. Again, you've got to come to these places. You've got to get to know these people. You've got to rub shoulders with the right people to get get your work, basically." And I was like, this seems mad. Anyway, the night goes on. Everyone's off the faces, pissed. And this big fella walks in, big beard, with no t-shirt on, with a pair of shorts on. And this girl's linked in his arm. She's absolutely, she barely walk. He's holding her up. And he brings it into like a table like this that's in the middle of like a hall. And there's other bits of tables around it, but this one had just been left empty. No one had touched it. There was no drinks on it, no nothing. And as I've walked in, he's picked it up and threw it on the table. So she's sat on the table like this. She's got hold of the backside of it and her feet are hanging over the other side. It's like a beveled glass table, sit like a square, and it spins. And he starts spinning her until she's from holding onto it, getting faster and faster. And as he's spinning the table, everyone starts gathering around in a circle. So I naturally do. I just follow the agents. And he's saying this chant. Again, it's a Latin chant. And I'm thinking, oh, this is mad. Again, there's all still people doing all kinds of weird stuff behind me that aren't part of this circle. And I'd like to going everywhere. I mean everywhere. Her hands were cut, her arms were cut, feet, upper legs, her ankles. And after a minute, he just stops it dead sudden, picks her up, throws her over her shoulder and walks out with her. And the agent goes, "Come on, madam." And I'm like, in shock, thinking this is mad. Maybe this is just what rich people do with their money. And we're in a cab on the way back. And I was like, "What the fuck was that? What have you got me into?" And he went, "Are you in our club or what?" And I was like, what fucking club are you on about? This is mad. Like, what were they doing? What's he doing with it? But what was interesting is as we've come out to get into the cab, you can hear him. But he was saying something, and you could hear him, like, going at it, you know what I mean? But every time you could hear a thrust, he was saying something as he was doing it. And like, I was making, like, he must have seen how shocked I was, the agents, and he was making a joke of it, going, they're together, they're in a relationship, stop sweating, like, you know, people have got weird fantasies that they like to fulfill. And I was like, yeah, but in front of everyone, making it, like, what's all that about? And he's laughing, and like laughing at me, where I felt like very small at that point, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got myself into some weird. I just didn't think for 1 minute it was what it was. I just thought these are all just weird people with too much money. So they've got to do this stuff. And the day after, he sent me another message. It was a text message saying, are you in our club or what? And I just wrote back, yeah. This thing used to take over a little bit. And every ounce of my body, every cell in my body went, no. It's like I knew what I was getting myself into, but it didn't. And I just felt the urge to go, yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay. Let's pause here because I don't know how much of that was left in the final edit that you guys are listening to. So I don't know if that all resonated with what exactly was happening. So let's just recap real fast. She gets invited to another party by her agent, right? And it turns out to be like a Diddy, situation. It's a freak off, but Diddy ain't there, but they still freaking off. Like everywhere you look is going down. Everywhere you look is going down. This dude comes in looking like Santa Claus, big beard, big belly, looking like Santa Claus, with a woman over his shoulder. She is overly drank off the liquor, right? Out of it. Puts her on the table. It's like a spinning type of situation. The table spins. Starts spinning. She's, cut in different areas. So, the red substance that comes out when you're, is going everywhere as the table is spinning. Now, all the agents, like the talent agents, I'm assuming, and whatnot, they're all like crowded around the table. So naturally she says, I don't know, I'm just going to follow because I don't know what to do. So she follows and she's going around the table and they're just standing there and they're all getting hit with the stuff, right? They're all getting hit. It's going everywhere. And the Santa Claus looking dude starts speaking in some demonic tongues. And then everyone just kind of leaves. And it's like, whatever. Like, it's just normal behavior at these freak offs, right? Everyone kind of leaves. And so she goes in the car to go leave with her agent. But in the taxi behind the one that she's in, she can hear that Santa Claus looking dude and the female going at it. But she said every time he would, enter, he would chant some type of like demonic tongue. Anyway, she's freaking out, right? She's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm here. Like, this is crazy activity. And the agent turns to her and is like, yo, are you in the club or not? Are you in the club or not? And then the next day, when she wakes up after that whole situation in the morning, the agent texts her and the agent says, are you in the club or not? And once again, she said something extremely interesting. And this just further confirms that the Bible is true. It's like, bro, this is spiritual. The warfare that we're seeing happening on this earth, this is spiritual warfare. There are forces at play that we cannot see with our own two eyes, but it exists. The spiritual realm exists. And you're either on God's side or you're against him. There's no in between because there's a war happening. So if you're standing in between, then guess what? You're against him. So anyway, she gets the text message. Are you in? Are you in the club? She says, every part of my body wanted to say no, but that demon that I went into covenant with by way of the spell and ritual that I did was speaking for me and said, yes. Yes, I'm in the club. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Because like I said, I don't know what made it to the final edit. So let's continue.
And then I started getting taken to dinner parties. Wasn't always a ritual, but the people I was there with were all involved in it. And the very, very familiar faces that were in these places. The next one I went to was down south in Berkshire. And it was my initiation, basically. And I walked in and as I'd basically been booked by this couple that owned this house. They had a business and they wanted me to model some like lingerie, stocking type of thing. My face wouldn't be in it, just my lower body. I was like, yeah, great. So they invited me down. And as I walked in, I remember having this feeling of dread. There was a fucking crow just stood next to my car as I got out the car and it was squawking at me. And I remember thinking, that's an omen. And I walks in and they were all over me, making a big fuss of me, like, oh, here you are, you're all new to all this, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm new to all this. And she just looked at me in the most weirdest way, like she just stopped suddenly speaking and stared at me and went, well, you were going to take it easy on your mum. And I was like, okay. So we had dinner and at one point, the fella who owns this house, the fella of the couple, stood up at the end of the table and he did a toast. And at the end of the toast, he put his champagne flute down. I went like that. Looked around on the table and everyone was doing it and I'm going, what? And I'm doing this right. And stops, picks up, cheers everyone, chin chin, and just carries on. And at one point they go, right, should we go to the drawing room? I think it was the drawing room. Some back room, big double doors, big wooden double doors, massive house. And it's like a games room. There's books in there. There's, board games, drinks and stuff like that. So everyone sits down and it's like they were red velvet sofas that lined it. And it was like an oblong shape. So everyone sits down on these sofas and we get to drink. And they were like, right, let's play some games. And I'm thinking, right, play checkers. Chess, you know what I mean? Maybe this is part and parcel of it because I've been immersed in a world at this point where I'm not used to it. It's nothing that I've ever been used to. It's all very much luxury, high society type of stuff. And he gets this gold mat off the shelf and they're spinning this mat and whoever it lands on, this woman's asking like a mad question to them. And it ends up landing on me. And I panicked. I don't know why, but I just panicked. And she looked me right in the eye and she went, once upon a time, you did something really, really naughty, didn't you? What was it, Molly? And I was like, I made a wish and it come true. And she just burst out laughing and went, yeah, spun the start again. And I'm thinking, this is weird. Where's this going? And after a while, a couple of people left and there was me, this couple that owned the house, and two other people that I've met out the industry that knew the agent. The agent wasn't there at that one. And as I've walked into another room, we've come out the games room, we've been taken into another room, there's a checkerboard marble floor. And in the floor is a big, massive, what is actually, it's not a pentagram, it's called a unicursal hexagram.
Freemasons.
You've heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something that Crowley uses.
Yeah, Freemasons.
Yeah. And there's one of them. And they start putting on these cloaks, the fellas, the women don't put one on. And they all stand in a circle and he's lighting these candles. They were on like 3 candelabras in 3 points around this hexagram. And he goes round and he's saying words and he's touching people on the head as he goes round, does it to me. And then everyone takes hands and I'm stood next to the fella of the couple who's leading this ritual. And this girl next to me takes my hand, so I've got all there on, but he doesn't take it. And he walks into the middle, takes a knife out of his pocket, and it was I can still remember it like it was yesterday. It had a deer horn as its handle. And he takes the knife out and he nicks it on, he starts on that side on the left of me, touches her finger with a little bit and goes through each person until he comes to me and he says, step forward. So he steps forward into the pentagram and he's looking at me and I can't quite see his face because he's put a veil over it and I'm thinking, but I can see these eyes and his eyes have gone black. He had blue eyes initially and his eyes were black as night and I'm thinking, is it the light? Is it this? Is it that? And then he turns his back to me and he blows out a couple of the candles. And as he does, you can see a very, very blatant shape of Baphomet's head appear over the hexagram from what he'd done with the light. He turns around to me, he cuts me behind my ear. He takes the blood drip that's on the end of the knife and he pops it directly in the middle of the hexagram, where basically the middle of Baphomet's head shadow is. And then he...
Did she say the way he positioned the light created Baphomet? Like the Baphomet's shadow? Baphomet's shadow on the hexagram?
Walks back to the edge of the circle. We all hold hands again. Everyone's straight. And I'm like this. And everyone's just stood there like saying these words. And I'm kind of like, and I panicked. I was shaking, like, only thinking, what is this? This is mad. Am I getting sacrificed? Is this where it's going? And then out of nowhere, hoods off, like nothing had happened, throws them back on the shelf. The women walk out, we're retiring for bed. And they just left me in this room and I go around and I'm blowing the candles out like that's a fire hazard and going through motions because I was in shock. And I goes to bed. Does the shoot for their brand a couple of weeks later. And I don't see them again. Never again, this couple. The other people that were involved in that ritual, seen them multiple times, but this couple, that was the only time I ever seen them. I mean, I could describe them for you and everyone would know exactly who they are. And I can't do that, you know what I mean?
Is that the Grand Masters, do you think?
She said, I could describe them for you and everybody would know who they are. Listen to his question. Is that the Grand Master? I don't even know what that even really means. I don't know what the ranking of all this demonic stuff is. I don't know. But listen to what she says.
Do you think that's the top?
Not quite top. So the initial fella that I'd met in the first, when I'd gone to that after party, when we were abroad, off that first very high paid job, he ended up as the leader, the fella with the crocodile skin shoes. He always had a briefcase to match. He always wore the same shoes. Very, very old fella, late 60s, early 70s.
Red shoes?
They weren't red, but you know that type of mahogany brown that's got a red tinge to it? Mm-hmm. That type, like patent leather shoes.
Were you not excited though, especially if you're going down the Levé route of the satanic?
So, those 3 old dudes who she met at that club in the private room, she said one of those dudes is the main dude of this whole situation that was going on. Does everyone know what do we do? Let's get to this part. All right. Let's get to this part. So I'm assuming this is what y'all have been waiting. If you're crazy enough to be interested in this type of activity. Let's play it.
This went on for, I was in this club for about a year. 2 years from the start of the process to sort of getting out, really. And at one of the last rituals that I went to is where I lost all bearings of reality and myself. And it was in France and I'd done a shoot. Ended up going to an after party. It was a huge event. They had like acrobatics on, fire breathers. It was boss. And later on in the night, bear in mind, I'm drinking, but I'm not drunk type of thing. Don't take any drugs, nothing like that. And later on in the night, they're bringing out these platters and I comes back into like the main, wasn't a hall, but like the main room where everyone was. And there's a body on a table just like this. In fact, this is round about the same size that it was. Like an overweight fella cut open with It's all been decorated with grapes and leaves and flowers, but like what I think was hanging out, his tongue had been out and it was on someone's plate. Who was just eating it. His eyes had been, but like they were still on the stalky thing, so they were just hanging. And I remember looking at it and panicking. I just had a panic attack and I started screaming. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And some fella comes behind me that had seen him, but had never spoke to him at these places. And he goes, "You're making a scene. Calm yourself down. It's just art, Molly." And I was like, this isn't art. And like the scouse bit came out of me and I'm like, you know what I mean? I lost this and I'm running down this hall, I'm looking for the toilets. And this fella comes behind me again and he grabs me and he throws me in this room. And this room's pitch black. Absolutely pitch black. And he gives me a drink and it's this pink fizzy drink. And I'm like, no, I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. And he's going, "You're going to have to calm down. You need to calm down. You're ruining the night for everyone. Do you not understand? You're making a scene and you're frightening other people. It's just art. It's not real. It's not real. It was real. I know what art is." And that was it.
It's just art, Molly. Molly! It's just art. It's just art, Molly. 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 It's just art. It's just art. I know my accent is terrible. My accent is better in my head. My accent is better in my head. And when I'm just like talking to my wife and I'm trying to do like a little accent, then it's like cool. But when there's pressure, it starts to crack. It was interesting that she said that this happened in France. And then we see the Olympics in Paris. And they put an overweight guy on a platter with grapes and apples and fruits and flowers and seemingly being prepared as the centerpiece for the feast. Mole, mole, mole. You remember this? This is all I was thinking about. It's going to be bright. Let me turn it down. This was all I was thinking about. Well, not all I was thinking about. I was thinking about a lot of things, but this was one of the primary things I was thinking about. Was this right here. Matthew 4, verse 8. Again, the devil took him, being Jesus, to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." It's just very interesting that it's the same offer recycled again and again and again. And ultimately, at the root of it, it's a dying offer. Because no matter how much the devil can give to you or offer to you, it'll all pass away. So you're trading eternity for temporary satisfaction and wealth. And it's the same offer that the devil tried to give to Jesus. Well, not try, but gave to Jesus and was declined. And what did Jesus say? "Begone, Satan." That's the first thing he said. That's the first thing he said. He put him in his place. Let's just establish who has the ultimate authority here. You don't tell me what to do. You know what I mean? Like, hold on. You done got the pecking order incorrect. Be gone, Satan. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. So here's the thing. He puts him in his place, right? Do y'all understand? For those of us who are in Christ, we have that authority. We have the spiritual authority to rule over these demonic entities and these spirits and the devil himself. Like, y'all understand that, right? We have greater spiritual authority by way of the one that we are in, Jesus Christ. We have access to that authority that Jesus has in the spiritual realm because we believe and we have put our faith in him, right? And we have received the Holy Spirit. So all these individuals, they want to, dip and dabble into the spiritual realm because they're looking for some authority in the spiritual realm, not recognizing that the one who grants ultimate authority in the spiritual realm is God, is Jesus. But you want to access the spiritual realm illegally to obtain the things that you want to obtain to please yourself based in your own selfish ambition, as opposed to submitting your life to Jesus Christ and allowing God to use you however he sees fit, which is ultimately better than anything that you could accomplish for yourself. But anyway, Jesus says, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. That's it. Very simple, right? Because she was having a conversation and she was talking, and apparently there's another video that I'm going to react to from this same podcast. You'll probably see it pretty soon. But she essentially says that she had a vision of Jesus Christ, and Jesus was encouraging her to continue to do magic. We're going to save my thoughts on that vision that she had for that video that I'm going to make soon. But this all started because she said she was at rock bottom. So instead of going to Jesus when you're at rock bottom, you turn to the demonic realm to help you get out of it, when the solution was actually very simple. And the solution is found in Matthew 4. You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. At the lowest moment, at rock bottom, and a lot of people come to God at rock bottom. A lot of people do. A lot of people have testimonies where they're at rock bottom and they say, you know what? I've tried everything else. Let me try God. And they come to Jesus, right? But there's also another side to that scenario where somebody hits rock bottom and they go in the completely other direction. And this is exactly what we saw with this testimony and with this story. Anyway, what are y'all thinking? Like, seriously. What's on your mind? I would love to know. Drop it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Like this video. I'm out, y'all.